I think at the end of the day, it comes back to what type of relationships we have with our team members, and that they feel valued. And so even though we might have a really stressful summer season, which we did, those relationships and putting them first, I think, helps us kind of ride those waves.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing great. How are you?
I am fantastic.
Woo!
Yeah. I got a question for you.
All right.
Have you ever seen the movie Vacation?
Yes.
Have you? Oh, yes. Many times. You know, when they're driving kind of early on in the journey, and they come up around St. Louis and they see the arch. Did they get to go up in the arch in the movie?
Well, Matt, you said you've seen the movie, and I'll be honest, it's been possibly a couple of decades since the last time I watched it in full. So please tell me what happens when the Griswold family gets to St. Louis. Because I know what happens when they get to California.
Of course, to Wally World. No, they did not go up in the arch.
Yeah.
Rusty asks, first of all, Clarke is telling them all about the arch, how tall it is, blah, blah, blah. There's an elevator that goes all the way to the top. Rusty says, "Can we go up in the top?" No. And they keep driving. So they didn't get to go up in the arch. I've never been in the arch, but you have.
I have been up in the arch because I wasn't with Clarke Griswold while passing through St. Louis, thankfully. I did. I was there, it was several years ago. It was probably 8 or 9 years or so ago. And I was staying at a hotel that's right at the end of the street downtown. That's right at the base of the national park right there. So I had a few hours free. I was there for work, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go to the top of the arch. And it was such an interesting experience. Unlike anything I've ever done before. You know, I've been to the top of the Empire State Building. I've been to a lot of observation decks. Which I think you can classify this as kind of in that category. But the tram is so fascinating. The museum that has the history of everything is so fascinating. Not of everything, but of the museum of the American West, of how it was built, all that, is so fascinating. And then being at the top is one of the most unusual but interesting experiences.
Why so unusual?
Well, you get to the top and there it is. You can just walk out onto it. The arch is an arch, right? So there's no flat floor. So it's arched. And there are windows on both sides of it. And the way that the platform is, you can walk up and kind of lean over so you can look out the window. And I just remember thinking, if I lean over, am I going to shift the weight distribution of the entire gateway arches, or then I'm, obviously but it's obviously I knew that I wasn't going to, but still standing there looking over it gives a very interesting feeling. And the view is absolutely phenomenal on both sides. And the tram ride itself is one of the most fascinating experiences. It definitely might be uneasy for some people who might be claustrophobic or, don't want to be near other people. I would say I got in, there was a family with me, and it was just us. We went to the top, and of course there were other people there, and then you go back down to the bottom, and that's the attraction. That's the experience.
Yeah. So this episode of the podcast is not about vacation, although you could argue that most of our episodes tie into vacation at some point, or a vacation. But today we have Sarah Clarke, who is the Director of Operations at the Gateway Arch, and we get to hear all about the mechanics of how things work, what to do if someone is a little claustrophobic, and all the things about the guest experience at the Arch.
Yeah, we get to hear all about the operations, a lot on operations leadership as well. And Sarah talks a lot about that. We talk about putting people first, both from the guest and the employee side of the experience, as well as thinking outside the box. We heard about just innovative ways that they were able to change throughout their entire renovation, which was a few years ago, as well as through the pandemic as well. And we just get to cover, how they thought outside the box to come up with several unique ideas.
So did they think outside the box or outside the arch?
That's a good point.
That's something to ponder while everybody else listens to this great interview with Sarah.
That's right. So Matt, can we go to the top?
Let's do it.
Hey, Sarah, welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast. We're really excited for our conversation today. How are you?
I'm great. And thanks for having me.
Excellent.
How are you both doing?
Doing great.
Absolutely great.
Yeah. So Sarah, to kick this off, can you give a quick intro? Tell us about yourself and your career in the industry.
Sure. So I am a native to the St. Louis area, born and raised, and now I live here with my husband and my 2 kids. I currently work for the Gateway Arch as the director of operations. And prior to that, I was kind of going back and thinking about it. I went to school for recreation management about 20 years ago, and I'm very fortunate to still be working in a related industry. And then right out of school, I was the general manager for a gymnastics training facility. I was 21 years old, and I couldn't have asked for a better first experience in my career. As far as I was doing HR, I was doing the marketing, I was doing the facility maintenance, just everything. And so I was, scheduling roof contractors, leading a team, and that really, on that level, has helped me so much in my career, be able to just apply it with everything else.
So Sarah, I'm curious if we could go back to that first job. You mentioned so many different hats that you had to wear and different things that you had to do. And you mentioned that it's still helpful today, that experience. Can you maybe go a little deeper and talk to us a little bit about how those experiences really shape what you still get to do today?
Sure. I think it really taught me to really focus on the big picture of how it affects everything, whether it's the facility, the team inside of it, the guests, and the students we were welcoming in every week. And that still applies now. So when I did have to troubleshoot or work up a solution for a particular challenge in that smaller venue, those lessons I learned are still very valid when we've worked through much bigger challenges like our large scale construction project or working through COVID mitigation strategies. All of those helped get us to that point.
Yeah. So now leading into today, Director of Operations at the Gateway Arch, can you tell us, for those who perhaps haven't experienced the Arch or who haven't been to the top, can you walk us through what the experience is like just when you arrive on site at the property? I know you go underground, there's the museum and then the funicular up to the top, or the elevator. I'm not sure if that's the official term or not. But can you walk us through just what the experience is like?
Sure. So the Gateway Arch Monument is part of Gateway Arch National Park. So when you first arrive on the grounds, it's 91 acres. There's, I believe, 5 miles of walking trails. It's just a beautiful park right on the riverfront. And then there's a visitor center that's built into the hill. And there's a world-class museum that was completely reimagined. It features over 201 years of history detailing westward expansion and St. Louis's role in it. And then you get to the original tram lobby that we call it. And that's where you'll find the load zones to take you to the top of the arch. We have the North Tram and the South Tram that take you to the top. They run completely independent of one another. And yes, so we call it the tram. It is actually kind of a mix of an elevator, an escalator, and a Ferris wheel, all put in one. And so there's really nothing like it anywhere else. And so you get to go to the top, which is up 630 feet. You can view about 30 miles in any direction on a clear day. And then you also kind of get this bird's eye view. If you kind of the wall slanted to the top, you can kind of lean on your stomach over, and you can also look straight down as far as out too. So just a very unique view.
Wow. So I would imagine that the Ferris wheel part is like when you get to the top and you can see and you've got the view. Is that kind of what you refer to the Ferris wheel part?
The Ferris wheel, just that it continues to adjust itself as it goes around the bend. That's more of the Ferris wheel part of it.
Okay. Not being familiar with the actual vehicle. It was kind of hard to picture, but thank you for that.
Sure.
So I've never actually been up in the arch, but there was a time when I was doing some other work in St. Louis, and I came to the grounds and I stood next to it. Like the arch wasn't open, but I stood next to it and looked up, and like my knees got weak. Like, I don't know if that's vertigo or something, but it's really disorienting to just stand next to that structure and look up. So what kind of reactions do you get from people maybe that haven't been there before or that are seeing it for the first time? I guess that's the same thing. But people that are coming in and experiencing it, you know, and kind of seeing the awe of it.
Well, a lot of times people are surprised to even learn that you can go to the top. They'll be standing on the grounds and looking up, and they'll see the little squares, the windows at the top. They can't even make out that that's what it is with the distance. But when they put together that you can go up, or kind of, I think what you referenced, you can stand right by one of the legs of the arch, walk right up and touch it, look straight up. I really like when I'm on the grounds and I hear kids' commentary about it. About how tall it is, how it must be there, what it's made of. They really come up with some fun stories.
Cool. And so a lot of people, learned about the Gateway Arch probably in school, right? When they were growing up, and then, visiting St. Louis, being able to see it, being able to experience it, being able to go to the top. It's definitely one of the most iconic symbols in America when you think about landmarks and when you think about historic places, important places, I would say, in the country. What's that like of being part or being a caretaker of such a well-known entity in just American history?
Sure. Well, I've truly just been honored to be able to have a role on the team of professionals that work to make the Gateway Arch available to visitors from around the world. Growing up in St. Louis, anytime you go away even a couple hours and you drive back into town and you see the arch, you just have this immediate warm feeling of home. So I grew up always seeing the arch and knowing it was something that was special about St. Louis. But it's also been so cool when I travel and, that common question, oh, what do you do? And I start to explain, and people kind of look at me and they say, the arch, and they do the hand, like that thing. So it's just so fun and rewarding to be part of something that's so well known and iconic.
Are there misconceptions? Like you talked about, the kids talking about what it's made of and having all these commentaries and conversations. What are some misconceptions maybe about the arch?
Well, if they do know that you can go to the top, which, like I said, a lot of people, that's a pleasant surprise to them. Some of them think you just kind of almost like a roller coaster, go to the top and come right back down. They don't know that you get out of the car and there's an observation deck at the top and you can look out the windows on both sides. And just all sorts of things. I mean, I've heard people ask, if I go up on the one side, will I come back down in Illinois, like on the other side of the river? Or there's just a whole slew of fun questions.
That would be or it should be rotated, right? It would be
exactly, yeah. So you stay in Missouri when you go up.
I've got to imagine that for such a unique type of attraction, a unique type of experience from the operations standpoint, there are probably some unique aspects, or perhaps some challenges of it that perhaps most other attractions might not necessarily see to the same degree. What are some of those unique aspects of operating the arch and the trams and just the overall experience that I'll use the word again, unique to the arch?
Sure. Well, we need to make sure that every decision we make, supports all of the federal laws being a part of a national park, and all the, the permitting, which is something that you wouldn't kind of have, say, in a private attraction, and making sure any programs that we do always support the mission and the educational themes of the national park. I think a challenge, which also ends up being a great opportunity, is just the amount of partners that we have here. So within the visitor center, for example, we have the National Park Service. We have the agency that I work for, which is by State Development Agency. There's a nonprofit partner, Jefferson National Parks Association. They run the retail portion of it. And then we have Evelyn Hill, which runs the food and beverage. They're also at the Statue of Liberty. And so you have all these partners in one space. And the challenge then is, how do you have this really seamless visitor experience? Because the visitor doesn't know, or should they really care, that we're all employees of different organizations, but how we come together and how we communicate to make sure that it's a great experience from the time they walk in the door to go to the top. And I'm proud to say that our communication, I think, as a team of those partners really is high quality. It's kept top of mind. So I feel we're really successful in doing that.
So Sarah, a minute ago, you mentioned construction, right? And,
Yes.
and I believe there was like a large construction project that happened recently. And I think at one point it sounded like there was no running water in the facility. Can you kind of walk us through that project and some of the challenges and opportunities that you faced during that?
Sure. So yes, it was a $380 million project that the construction of it took place over about 5 years. It added square footage to the visitor center and the museum. It completely redesigned the museum, and it improved the park spaces and also improved accessibility, which was a huge part of the project. And so while that construction was going on, with the exception of just a few months, we stayed open to visitors the entire time. So construction fences and construction walls were constantly moving. How we would have people get here by car, by foot. We were constantly giving updates to staff of how to get to inside the building. And what you referenced, Matt, yes, we did go a couple months where we had very limited offerings. It was just going to the top, and the bathrooms were being worked on. So the only option we had was some porta potties outside. So it really just forced, I think, the team as a whole to try to think outside of the box. We spent a lot of time in our conference room. I have a colleague who loves those really big sticky Post-it notes, and just brainstorming. And really some of our best solutions were things that we developed on these huge Post-it notes. And I think then really, once you got those kind of big ideas and those solutions, then the communication piece of making them happen.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through that Post-it note innovation process, or thinking outside the box, or kind of expand a little bit on that, as far as kind of you've got those challenges, those limitations. Running water is a pretty big limitation,
Yeah.
right? So something like that, and within that whole renovation project of coming up with innovative ideas and thinking outside the box.
Sure. So I'm so fortunate that my team, I'm proud to say that on the full-time team, everybody here has been promoted at least once, and some people multiple times. So that has really given us the ability to be able to recognize it from their different roles and different experiences. If we make this decision or try to implement this, it's going to affect, this part of the experience. It's going to affect these team members. So that has really been so helpful as we would sit down in the conference room with the sticky notes. We would be drawing out during different parts of construction. We had to draw out, okay, we can't even get people to the normal entrance for the tram. How are we going to take them in a back hallway safely, and break it down? Just having all those great people at the table really made it possible. And then I think we didn't know we were preparing ourselves for the pandemic, but we had so much experience and practice just having these, fire drills of having to adapt to, whatever had changed, that by the time we got to the pandemic, it was certainly challenging, but we were able to kind of jump back into that problem solving mode very quickly.
Yeah, I was going to ask a little bit about that. I didn't know if the construction overlapped with the pandemic. It sounds like it did not. Is that
It did
correct?
not. No, the grand opening was in 2018 in the summer, and then of course the pandemic in 2020.
Sure. So what were some of those specific lessons that you maybe took from that construction project and were able to apply once things sort of started to change in 2020?
I think just getting comfortable with it's okay to do something a completely different way, and having experience doing that. I feel like early on in construction, we would, identify whatever challenge it was, and it was like, oh, but we can't do that because of this reason and this reason. But when we really would turn it on its head and realize that there was a lot of possibilities if we were kind of willing to take a chance and try it differently, once we got more comfortable with that, I think that really helped us in our pandemic operations, because we truly, once the pandemic got here, completely changed our visitor flow and process in a way we never had before. And it was a great success.
Yeah. I like what you just said there about it's okay doing something a completely different way. And there's, the old saying of, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? But rather pulling back and saying, we can do things differently. We can do things better as related to the construction project and then leading into the pandemic. Can you talk a little bit about, I would say, the reopening and kind of the time since the reopening of perhaps changes that needed to be made, operational constraints, limiting capacity, kind of all of that, and how you've navigated that to really ensure that there's still that seamless experience, but perhaps done in a little bit of a new way.
Sure. So I think like many attractions or just any public facilities, of course, we were looking at social distancing and floor markers and those types of things. But once we reopened, and let's see, the building itself was closed for a few months, completely closed, the facility. But then even when it reopened, we were waiting on the tram ride because I think you said, Josh, you've been up, but Matt, you have not been to the top, right?
Correct.
Okay. So it's a very small car, to give you a sense, that closes when you're on your way up. 5 can sit inside of it, and you're pretty much knee to knee with your, family members or new friends that you meet in the tram. And so, oddly enough, that's not the most ideal situation for a pandemic, getting that close, with your new friends. So really trying to think of a way to only seat family members together, which of course impacted our capacity, but we knew we needed to do that for safety at that time. And then also the visitor flow looked completely different. We used to, like I said, have the north and the south operating completely independently. So if you went up on the north, you came to the observation deck and then you came down. For a while, we were taking you up on one side, giving you some time on the observation deck, and then you came down on the other side, which may sound little, but that was a completely new way of doing things and adjusting our visitor flow. And then also procedures as far as masks and other disinfecting, that was very new. And again, communicating that with all of our partners and all of our visitors was certainly a challenge, but the team did a really great job.
So I'm curious, through this construction and all of your experience, and then through COVID, do you have sort of a guest experience philosophy that has sort of driven you through all of that, saying these are our sort of non-negotiables, these are the things we have to make sure that we're doing, within all these challenges, but we still have to have this level of kind of an experience?
Sure. Well, really, I like to keep it really simple as far as we need to put people first. And so starting with the staff and the team members, making sure their needs are met, making sure they feel appreciated, that they have the tools that they need for their jobs, that they feel empowered to do those and meet the guest needs. And the biggest thing is making sure they know that we care about them as a person, we care about their families, what's important to them. Because if we don't do that, then I don't see any reason for them to feel that they should really be caring for the guests that come in and their families and what's important to them about their visit. So first we want to meet our team members where they are and give them that experience internally, and then getting them to see through the lens of the visitor. We have so many visitors who come for the first time, grandparents and parents bringing their kids for the first time. This might be their first visit in 10 years and bringing a new family member. So it's really a special experience often. And our staff is so good about celebrating with our guests, asking where they're from, and just making sure they feel really comfortable, especially because, like we've said, this is a very kind of unique and somewhat unnerving experience between the tight spaces and the heights.
That's something I wanted to ask you about, because a couple of minutes ago, you described what the experience is like of being in the tram. And yeah, you were doing it through the lens of COVID and, social distancing.
Yeah.
And I remember when I went up, it was several years ago, I was by myself and I had another family in there and I was like, oh, we're all together. Like it's as if I'm part of this family now. And I remember, they had small kids and I got in there and I'm thinking, I've done a lot of thrill rides. I've done a lot of roller coasters, and the Arch is not a thrill ride, but in many aspects, it kind of gives some of those butterflies in your stomach that some maybe larger amusement attractions might do. Mm-hmm. And, Matt and I both have backgrounds in ride operations. So we've had to sometimes calm down parents or be able to calm down children into saying, as far as what to expect, who might be scared, who might be uneasy, who might want to get out. And I'm just thinking of the tram. Once you get to the top, it's still a little uneasy. You talked about you can go and lean forward a little bit against the glass. I remember doing that thinking, okay, what if I shift the weight distribution too much? And okay, the Arch is not going to topple over, right? So as far as kind of looking at it through the guest experience lens, there's the operational aspect and the efficiency and the capacity and the COVID, concerns. But as far as just making sure all guests are comfortable going into the experience where they might have those butterflies in their stomach?
Yeah, so we do that in a few ways. We have a replica tram car. That's when you first walk in the visitor center, right by the ticket center. So when you're making that decision, you can get in, kind of feel what it's like. And that's also a great photo op. So if they take those photos there, it's not slowing down our loading and unloading process on the tram. So that's really a good first way to give it a test drive. Also, our staff is so good about explaining what to expect. The ticket sales agents, they know to ask every person if they have any issues with stairs, heights, or claustrophobia. So they're able to, if any concerns come up, give them more details, kind of walk them through it. And then down in the load zone, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a guest compliment that highlights a certain tour guide and says, I really was about to not go up. And that tour guide just made me feel at ease, or they talked to my child in a certain way. And I'm so glad that they encouraged me to do it, because that experience was so worth it. So they really do a great job of engaging with the guest and making sure they feel comfortable with the experience.
Well, and that really reiterates and solidifies your people first sort of mentality, right? You're taking care of those tour guides so they can take care of the guests. And, it is, I'm sure when I do it, I'm going to find out how unique it is and how cool it is. But even just talking about it and knowing a little bit about it, it certainly is a unique experience. But if you go there and you say, oh, I'm afraid I'm not going to do it, like kind of any thrill ride, like Josh was saying, like you might regret it later.
Yes.
And especially one with this sort of historic significance, I could definitely see somebody kind of walking away from it if they said, no, I'm not going to do it, of really saying, oh, I really should have bucked up my courage. So, the team really has a huge impact on the experience, or whether or not people are going to have the experience. So can you talk a little bit more about how you either train the staff or support the staff so that they have that sort of empathy for the guests, and they're not just saying, get in, it's fine?
Sure. From the beginning of training, they're paired with a seasoned tour guide for at least 5 shifts that's really walking them through each stage of the process. And I think it's also through modeling that type of behavior. For example, we'll often get a tour guide that will ask, hey, is it okay if I leave this post for a bit? There's a guest that's nervous. Can I go up with them and accompany them? That's something that they love to do. And when they see that that's something that whenever we can spare that person, that we encourage and we embrace, I think they realize how important it is to us. And it's not just lip service, that we want each visit to be the best as it can be. And we want their day working here, to be really fulfilling and rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Sarah, one of the things you talked about it a little bit ago was about kind of that a lot of people have been promoted. And I would say that the culture of promote from within. Can you shed a little light on, I would say, the staff development strategy to ensure that employees coming in have the opportunity to be promoted, and just the move through the cycle of employment with the Arch?
Sure. Pretty much all of our frontline supervisors that have been promoted to those full-time roles, they were originally on the floor. From time to time, you'll have a hire like myself, who I came in as the manager of operations and was eventually promoted to director. So I don't have the on the floor experience like everybody else on this team. But it's really important to us for them to feel that they have that growth. We are a small department overall. We are part of, like I said, By State Development, which is actually the transit agency in St. Louis. So that does the light rail and the buses, the transit system. So compared to that large operation, our tourism division is very small in numbers. And so anything that we can do to show our staff that there is some chance of upward movement for growth, and getting them tied into different developmental opportunities and trainings whenever we can, so that they know that that's their development is important to us, exposing them to different things, special projects, if there's somebody that has an interest, anything that we can do like that, I think we have a much better chance of retaining them.
So Sarah, can you talk a little bit about your work within the community? Because I know that there's other things that really help, either drive business or just, kind of build relationships. And maybe kind of a second part to that is that people may not realize, unless they've been to St. Louis, how many attractions are in St. Louis. I was talking to Josh, I don't know, a couple of months ago, like we need to go to St. Louis and do like an Attraction Pros Take St. Louis, because there's so
Yes,
many different things
please.
we could do. The Arch, and I'll mention Grant's Farm, one of my favorite places, Anheuser-Busch and Six Flags, and, all these different attractions that there's got to be, some sort of relationship with them from an attractions community standpoint, but also kind of the St. Louis community at large. So maybe that's a two-part question.
Sure.
About just your involvement in the overall community.
Yeah, so I'm very active in the St. Louis Attractions Association, and we're fortunate that that community is just so warm and everybody wants to help one another and share ideas. And so we also have a group of operators from all the major attractions, and we get together quarterly. First, we just kind of share what's going on at our attractions, special events coming up. But then our favorite time at the end is just really jumping into what challenges are you facing, what has worked well for others, helping to generate ideas, and sometimes just, support, especially through the pandemic. That was important. We have, like you mentioned, a lot of world-class attractions in St. Louis, many of which are free, which is very unique to St. Louis. We have a world-class zoo, completely free, and you really don't find that anywhere else. And then the second part of your question, I think, about kind of more tourism in St. Louis at large. The future of St. Louis, I think, is really bright. We consider ourselves to be one of the best sports towns in the nation. We have the St. Louis Cardinals and the St. Louis Blues, so we're a big sports town. And there's also a lot of development on the horizon related to sports. The St. Louis City Soccer Club is about to start playing in their new stadium next year, so that has a lot of buzz in town. And also for conventions and group business, I feel like everywhere with the pandemic, of course, we saw those go down. But Explore St. Louis is really investing in further expansion of our convention center downtown, trying to bring those groups back and really compete with some other similar markets. And so that they just recently broke ground on that. And so we would love to see more groups back and group business.
So you mentioned the St. Louis Attractions Association, and in 2019, you were awarded the Spirit of St. Louis Award from the St. Louis Attractions Association. Can you talk a little bit about what went into that award and what that was like?
Sure. Actually, I was nominated, and everything's a secret. I didn't learn about it until I was actually being awarded at their luncheon. So that was such a nice surprise. And I think the nomination was mostly related to all the challenges during construction and how I helped with those with the team. It was a great honor to be recognized in that way and continue to go to those luncheons and get to recognize the other fantastic professionals in this industry.
Awesome. So from the award and to certainly what you're doing now, I want to go way, way back, because I read something on your LinkedIn profile about how when you told your parents you wanted to go into recreation, they kind of gave you a funny look or something like that.
They did. So in fairness to my parents, by the time I decided to move to recreation, it was my fifth major. I really could not decide what I wanted to do. And I had done all sorts of things in education. And then when I said recreation, they really looked worried. And my mom had went to the same college that I did. She was there in the 70s. And when I told her I was going to major in recreation, she's like, no, I remember those people and they were in the quad, like throwing a ball around. That's what you're going to do. They were a little worried at first. Luckily, it's all turned out really well. But I really was just drawn to recreation because to be able to have a job where your job is helping other people have fun, I don't think it, can get any better.
So when you talk about helping other people have fun, we talk about recreation, we talk about the attractions industry. And this might get kind of broad or maybe deep here or so, but as far as the importance of recreation, the importance of helping people have fun, the importance of, the attractions industry in general, what's your viewpoint on that as far as just, how critical it is?
Oh, I mean, it's so critical. I mean, I think you hear so much in the attractions industry, what an economic driver it is. And of course, that's certainly true and very important. But how we're benefiting people's lives and giving them great experiences, giving them an outlet, after a crazy week at work. But yeah, to be able to have that impact in their free time, or like I said earlier, getting to see just the connections that people have when they're coming with their family, when a Girl Scout troop is coming through. There's really just nothing like it. I have a 5-year-old and an he's almost 8. And he was just asking me the other night about work, and he's very curious about it. And he actually asked, he's like, well, why do you do it? And I said, well, of course we work to make money. I was like, but I think a big part of work is helping people. And he was really just fascinated by that. And he's like, oh, so you help them buy tickets and you help them go to the top. And it just like blew his mind. But I just thought it was really sweet, but just really, really true.
Yeah. So you're recruiting at a very young age, it sounds like.
Yes.
No, and I would agree, and I'm sure Josh does as well, how important the industry is. And I know when we were, through the pandemic, and we were talking about non-essential businesses and employees, and Josh was making, the rallying cry that no, attractions are essential. And I would, of course, agree with that. And I think it's not just about the guests, like you were saying, it's about the employees too, right? Giving them an outlet and giving them the opportunity to help other people, because helping people can really feel good, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're able to do that, it can be something that lifts your spirit more than drains, the energy. So absolutely on board with all of that. I think my question then is, when it comes to continually doing that, and we hear people talk about burnout, and we hear people talking about how tough that can be sometimes, when you get past the point of your energy and that kind of thing. So how do you balance that part of the job where you know that yourself and your tour guides and your staff, they're giving a lot, but also they need to be balanced in terms of what they're getting, and not just monetarily, but maybe even emotionally?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all noticed that with the pandemic, it really had us kind of take a step back and look at work-life balance. And that's kind of to what I was alluding earlier when I said, when we're thinking about our team members, what's important to them, what's, their family. Like we're really big here. If anybody has a family situation going on, being very clear, we don't want you to feel bad about work. We just want you to do whatever you need to do. And so whether it's a small appreciation event, whether it's, we have a supervisor here who she comes up with the most fun challenges and just questions. For example, right now there's something on the board about, do you like coffee or tea better? Just something small. But the staff gets excited for that question every week. Just little things like that. But I think at the end of the day, it comes back to what type of relationships we have with our team members, and that they feel valued. And so even though we might have a really stressful summer season, which we did, those relationships and putting them first, I think helps us kind of ride those waves.
Mm.
Yeah. So I like coffee better. Matt likes tea, for so everyone knows. Yeah.
I will add you to the list.
Thank you.
Please. So we've talked a lot about, the employee experience. And we've also talked about a lot about the guest experience. And one thing that Matt and I have been talking a lot about is really the intersection between the two. That a lot of the things that you do to enhance the employee experience can be duplicated to enhance the guest experience, and just vice versa. Can you share a little bit, I would say, of your insight or your viewpoint on how those two aspects of the business intersect?
Sure. I mean, of course, we already kind of talked about, if you treat one really well, the other one, of course, is going to get that same benefit, hopefully. But I think it's even on a smaller level throughout the day. Like we always have a staff kickoff meeting in the morning, and the energy that you bring to that meeting, and the positivity, hopefully, and those types of things, that when they get on the floor, or throughout the day, we've really been modeling, that type of experience, whether it was back of house or front of house. Yeah, I hate to be a broken record, but I just really think it's so much about, treating our team members right and positively and giving them good communication, and all those things then translate over. We show them how important it is. We give them the tools in their training for how to do that with the guest. And then once they do it and do a great job, having that positive reinforcement that they did a wonderful job.
And don't worry about being a broken record. If something works, keep going.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I also want to talk about sort of the other side of the coin, if you will. We've all probably had managers and leaders that maybe shouldn't have been in that position, or didn't have the tools and the communication skills needed. So, what do you look for in someone to know that they're ready to be promoted to the next level? Like, what sort of qualities or outlooks are you trying to assess to see if that person's ready?
Well, how they treat other people, I think, is huge, whether it's their coworkers or if they've had the ability to be a supervisor in any capacity. That's something I definitely look at. Their communication, their respect level that they give that person. I look for, even if they haven't had a leadership role in title, what types of things were they doing to take initiative? Were they ever wanting to take on, a special project, or, were they a good role model for others? I feel like the ones with management experience, whether it's, again, they were actually a supervisor of some type by name, or they were really dedicated to improving a specific operational process. If they can do that on a smaller scale, then those are the types of people that we really look for, and we want to promote and help them to develop into larger responsibilities.
Is there any advice that you have for people who want to grow into operational leadership positions that you like to share?
I think just any chance that you can get to serve in a leadership role. And again, it doesn't have to be an official, title or job that you have, but being that strong role model, making wise decisions in the best interest of the operation, and being open to doing so many different things under the sun. Of course, that whole, if I'm a tour guide and you ask me to do something that's outside of what seems like my scope, that kind of typical, that's not my job. I mean, somebody that just really wants to jump in and is willing to try anything. I think if you do that, especially earlier in your career, it will so much pay off, because you never know what kind of opportunities will present themselves when you do.
So I'd like to expand that question a little bit and maybe go back to Sarah when you were going through your 5 different majors.
Yeah.
What advice would you give Sarah back then?
I think, again, that it's okay to do something very different. Like, even when I got into recreation, I didn't really know what I was going to do, or, so many people now do things that are completely out of what they went to school for. So I think just being open to experiences, or even when I first got my first job offer to work in gymnastics, I knew nothing about gymnastics. So that was really scary, but I was going to manage this business. So just being open to taking a risk, I think I would encourage younger Sarah to do that even more.
Even more.
And it's interesting you say, don't be afraid to do something completely different, really ties in with a lot of the things we were talking earlier of thinking outside the box and not being afraid to do something different, whether it's from the operational standpoint or whether it's with your own career and your own professional future. So excellent. Sarah, we still have a few minutes left here, but as we start to wind this down, if people wanted to learn more about the Arch, or if they wanted to get a hold of you directly, where would you send them?
Sure. Well, the best place would be to go to gatewayarch.com. We have visitor information on there, history. It will just kind of walk you through the whole experience, and you can even buy tickets on there. If anybody's interested in reaching me directly, probably best is my email, which is SE.Clarke, and Clarke has the E at the end, at gatewayarch.com. And I'd be happy to chat. And Matt and Josh, we really need to get you on your St. Louis road tour.
Yes.
Do it.
Let's go. Let's go.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Sarah, this has been a fascinating conversation, and I just have one quick question before we kind of wrap it up, and that has to do maybe with the history of the St. Louis Arch. And we've talked a lot about it from an attraction standpoint, and certainly the uniqueness of it and how it works and that kind of thing. But what does it mean from a historical standpoint for the city of St. Louis and even the U.S.?
Sure. So it was, the monument was designed to be a monument to Thomas Jefferson and his vision of westward expansion. And even though it was built in the 60s, it goes back way further than that. There was a design competition in 1947, and a Finnish American architect, Eero Saarinen, he had a design selected in 1949. And although he never got to see it, its completion, he died in the early 60s and it was completed in 1965. It's the symbol of westward expansion, the symbol of St. Louis, in my opinion. And then he also wanted to have a tram system that went to the top. At the time, the National Park Service didn't have enough funds to make that happen. And so they partnered with Bi-State Development, who again did the transit in town. And then they entered an agreement to do the design and then the operation of it. So that's why this other entity has been operating the tram since it was designed and built. And the trams opened in 1967 and 1968. There was a museum in the visitor center from very early on, but like I said, it did get completely redesigned in 2018. Something I really love about the new museum is it also has a gallery dedicated to the design and the construction of the arch, which is something that we didn't have before. We also have a documentary movie that has real footage of building the arch, and visitors really love that because, of course, OSHA wasn't around or didn't have quite the same restrictions as they do now. So there were construction workers up on the arch, no harness, smoking a cigarette, giving each other a haircut, hundreds of feet from the ground without a care in the world. And so people are always just fascinated by that, and that no one was killed during its construction. It's just an amazing building.
Yeah. That's cool that the museum includes the history of the location itself. I always love when places do that because you just go there and it's just assumed, right? It's just here, right? It's here for my enjoyment or my experience, whatever it is. It's like in Chicago, the Museum of Science and Industry, there's a submarine, a U-boat in the museum, and part of the exhibit is how do we get a U-boat into the museum? So that's what that reminded me of. So yeah. Sarah, this has been so fascinating. Thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. We really appreciate your time today. And for everyone out there who's watching and listening, just remember, we are all attraction pros.
Thanks for listening to the Attraction Pros podcast.
Make sure to subscribe so you can tune in when new episodes release, and even better, please leave us a review on iTunes.
For more information, visit attractionpros.com.